This is episode 234 of the Gold Squadron podcast. I'm your host, Dio Morales, and today I'm joined by Marcel. Everyone chill. Riot in orderly fashion. Manzano.
Civilly. Riot civilly. Burn, pillage in a civil, orderly fashion.
Will, I have contained my rage for as long as possible, Hakewood.
But I shall unleash my fury upon you like the crashing of 1,000 waves.
And Ryan, disappointed, Staniszewski.
Maybe not in what you're thinking, though, but I am disappointed.
Alrighty then. Well, today we got some stuff to talk about. I want to start by saying I'm glad that we had our for instance, I'm glad that we don't podcast Friday nights, right? I think this would be an extremely different conversation. I think the episode will be very different. I'm glad that we've had a few days to reflect, to see different people's opinions, to have discussions, and see where different people's end up landing. All right. So if you don't know what we're talking about, on Friday at around 1 p.m. Central, I will never forget because my notifications went. It was a little ridiculous. Like I was at work. I had just finished a cello lesson. Just finished teaching a cello lesson. I had a prep break, and I was like, oh, let me make sure and nothing's going on. Take a peek at my phone, and I just go, what? AMG on their Twitter, they publish a post. Now I'll go ahead and share my screen here so that it will be seen by anybody who maybe didn't get to see it. The original. Sorry, I didn't have this prepared. Realize that now. We'll go right here.
I'm disappointed, Dion.
Be disappointed. All right. All right, right here. So they had said in their Twitter post that if they had played their game on Thursday. They were planning on playing an X-Wing game on Thursday, but they were having internet issues. These were the random player orders they would have used. So we'll start by just reading it off. Planning phase. What is the planning phase? So players choose maneuvers for their ships using maneuver dials. Once their dials have been set, players roll to determine player order for the round as described in determine order step of setup, which they have this this roll-off thing. Basically, whoever has the most crits is first player. If not crits, then focuses, and then if not focuses, then hits. That's because there's 1 on the die, 2 on a die, and then 3 on the die in that order. And then the paragraph the first paragraph already got people going, what? And the last paragraph really reinforced it. After all ships have dials assigned to them, players roll to determine player order for the round. Note that during the first round of setup, player order is determined during setup. So to just kind of reinforce what happens, you set your dial, then you determine. And again, this is not official yet. It's not published in any documents. This is just saying how they would have done it if they would have playing. It's at least what they're considering all the way to what will be implemented. Somewhere around that continuum. And there was, I don't know, a disturbance in the force is maybe a way to Ryan with a little bit. On Saturday, I did kind of a stream where I was literally just going through my thoughts because I had a lot of thoughts. I hadn't formed my opinion, and I think I'm in a better place now. I think because I'm not one to immediately go and yell from the top of my lungs my thoughts because I don't trust my initial thoughts almost ever on anything. I always like to think it through at least a little bit. So I want to spend more of this episode, though, hearing from Marcel, Will, and Ryan. And I'm just going to kind of help guide the conversation because I do have some additional thoughts. I have solved some things in my mind, and I have some questions that I wanna throw at the boys. Now, Marcel, I know you got like 9 pages of notes or something. We'll get 11. I want to start with Ryan first, though. I want to start with Ryan because I think he's going where I think he's going, and I want to talk about that first as well. Maybe I'm wrong on what he's going for.
What part overall do we want to start with? You want to start about the actual substance of the rule itself, or what my middle name disappointment is pointed towards?
That's where I want to hit first. Because here's the thing. Anybody who's going to have a negative reaction to what you're about to talk about isn't going to listen to the rest of the podcast to really hear the discussion and the debate. Let's be honest, right? Like
Sure.
This is the point where they're already turning it off. So if this bothers you, what we're about to say, you're probably part of the problem. Just saying. But
And that
go
doesn't
ahead.
mean you should walk away from this immediately. This is your time to self-reflect. But all right, so basically,
Right,
let's start painting the picture a little bit here. Friday, it's the day after my 5th anniversary with my wife. It's my day off at work. We come out of seeing the new James Bond movie, and my phone, like yours, Dion, lit up completely. I saw the rules change, and I said, you know what? I'm not involving myself in any text-based conversations. I haven't developed a full opinion yet. I'm just going to let this go throughout the weekend. I'm going to observe how the community reacts, and I'm going to take in some of the responses from around the community. And what I saw the first couple days, honestly, was a pretty big disappointment in my eyes. The community at large burned down to a degree that I had not seen quite a while, maybe ever yet. And for it to a point where, like, name calling, bringing down the actual developers of the game at AMG right now, like, I had seen people actually going onto the Facebook page of Atomic Mass Games and reviewing them negatively just for this X-Wing change and not giving actually any critical feedback to them. So there's just numerous upon numerous things. Fly better. I can't believe what Farmer had to go through this whole weekend. And then all the people he probably had to ban or put in a timeout a little bit from Fly Better's Facebook. And then there just became this intermixing mesh of, like, maybe there was some points being made by one side or the other, but it was hard to weed through it all when everyone was just tossing crap back at each other, basically. So there were just spoiled children everywhere. Okay. This is a game we all want to enjoy. We are passionate about it, and we resonate with that passion. But don't let that passion overtake you, a la Darkseid, everyone. Darkseid has some cool stuff at times, but this is not the case of where we implement the fun part of the Star Wars lore. This is the time, let cooler heads prevail. Take some time. I get a lot of people have heard the phrase, try it out. But realistically, try it out. Don't go crazy. Don't burn bridges, because I have heard of plenty of people throughout this entire weekend that have been like, wait a minute, this person I've known for quite a while in the X-Wing community, I thought they were better than this, and they weren't. So I understand that this community is small. We all know each other. Very easy to point out who are burning bridges and who are not jiving and making this a better community.
Right.
So be better than everyone else and be an example, a good example, as best you can.
And just for reference, because I do think this is important as well. So I know all of us kind of lurk in different, like, some of the same places, but some different places. So for instance, I would say for the last, like, 3 months, I've been completely checked out of Facebook. Haven't looked at it, and that's for personal reasons. So I don't even have it on my phone. So the majority of of a lot of the interactions that you saw, which I'll tell you I saw some negative stuff where I was too, but just to kind of give frame of reference, that was a lot of, it sounds like the Fly Better Facebook group. Any other specific places you want to give so we can kind of just have that scope?
I mean, any level of discords could have had stuff going back and forth. You know, those are the two main ones, right? Facebook, discords, and any Facebook group had varying opinions, but it was, I think when I last time I looked at it, the actual Facebook post by Atomic Mass Games that post that, it had like 800 plus comments in it. I'm not going through that. I just can't imagine what it devolved into, very likely.
Yeah.
Because just knowing what had happened and how Fly Better had some things devolve over time. Like I said, Farmer had his work cut out for him. I can't believe he still handles what he's handling right now. You know who you are. What you put him through, you should feel bad about yourself. You should really reflect upon how you affect other people in this community.
All right.
Can I add a little to that though? And I love Ryan. And actually, I wish the rest of Facebook and internet dumb. Is that a word? Internet, the dumb of internet, and not D-U-M-B, but D-O-M. Like fiefdom.
Yeah.
Sure, it's a Marcel word.
Yeah. Anyway, I wish, different, sometimes even, spectrums different of opinion would be like me and Ryan. Like me and Ryan don't agree on a lot of like strategy tactics or what's good, what's bad in terms of lists, or even in some of the choices that are made like right now. Like we may not completely agree, but we respect each other, we care about each other, we love each other, and we talk about it because we understand that we have different opinions, but we're still like after the same net result, which is having a good game with a good community. So we talk about it, right? And I'm passionate, and I'm kind of, I like my words fly. Like I don't mince words too often. I do maybe more here than I do online, but it's still like that. I do agree that it shouldn't go to that extent. But I'm also going to add that it's not just to the people that were being negative, that need to chill. Also, the people that were being basically like the double negatives, negative about the negative, or overly critical about somebody's opinion because it wasn't, like give these guys a chance or whatever. Like Ryan and I on the back end, he when he brought up the whole Facebook, like, oh, they're bombing their Facebook. I was like, well, they're not. It's 6 people. It's not. There was 6 reviews. There were 6 negative reviews over the weekend. Now I agree. Give it a chance and try it out before you dog someone based on your gut reaction. Don't do that. Like give it a try. If you notice, I was active on Facebook and I was mostly trolling and I was putting my opinion of what I felt, but I didn't say this is how I feel about it because I haven't tried it. I played 2 games on it today, so I do have some, not full. I have some anecdotal of like what the experience was. So I do agree. Like, don't go and just because you have a knee-jerk reaction and start dogging things, but also don't allow people to vent without villainizing them automatically, because not everyone is venting in a non-constructive way. There was a lot of people who didn't like it, and they were given reasons of why they didn't like it, and they were equally being balked in with the people that were loud, yelling, and insulting. So it's like there's just chill on it. It's one of those situations where just chill, like chill. Have some scotch. I'm having some scotch tonight. Chill. Anyway, so I just wanted to throw that in. Like relax. Like there's a middle ground. Don't go over here and be angry and chop people's heads off, and don't go over here and do the same thing to just tone it down.
Yeah, and
don't make it right. Very simply.
Yeah.
And one of the things that just again, I had family stuff this weekend, really didn't get to set it up, but today that I something I really liked is I mean, pat myself on the back. It was my idea, so I did it. But the people reacted to it well. On the GSP Discord, I basically made 3 different channels, okay? I made a channel where you can tell me why you like it, why you like the random player order after dials, and another one where you can tell me where you disagree, and another one where you discuss. But in the rules for that discussion, I tell you that you have to tell me why. Because really, what both of you guys are talking about is there was a lot of sound, right? A lot of but no reasoning. Like there were very few coherent thoughts outside of I'm mad or I'm trying to be defense, because that's essentially what ends up happening, right? When you have one extreme, you end up getting the other, and the crux of it is that it all comes from passion, right? It all comes from, I love X-Wing. This is what it says. I love X-Wing. Things are happening. And whatever the context is, I think it always is a better discussion when you actually like take a second and like don't just be mad or don't just be on defense. Say your piece. And shout out to the people who have been using that on our Discord. Thank you to you. There's been a couple I've had to poke a little bit and been like, hey, take a second, reword this, and they've taken it positively. I haven't had to ban a single person. On Friday, there was about 3 that I had to be like, nope, because they just took it way too far right away. But yeah, like have a discussion, maybe. Like a discussion is have points and reasonings, not just I like it. Period. Give us more. But Will, when we actually start breaking this down, we're gonna start with you. But is there anything about in this realm, but so that we can leave this, because we have to? This is impossible not to touch on this before we continue. Sure. But is there anything in this realm that you want to hit up?
No, just I mean, I can give my personal experience. By the way, the Rage Sunny quote was a joke. It was more for the people we were talking about that the rage cannot be contained. But yeah, I mean, I had the same, knee-jerk reaction everybody else did of just like, what? Why? That's impossible kind of reaction. And it's taken me a couple days. I was actually away this weekend, away from, I don't know, gaming and stuff, hanging out with my girlfriend. And that actually gave me a lot of time to reflect upon the changes and see that reaction from an outside point of view. And just, it was so outrageous on the, against team that I felt what I think Ryan, you were saying, that the defenders came out of just being like, wait, come on, you can't personally attack people or whatever. Right. So then I guess I'm defending it, but I don't know if I'm ready to defend it yet. So it was a lot of mixed reactions, but I think for me, it's finally evened out. I think that I am ready to discuss it more logically and really, like you said, Dion, find the reason why I either agree or disagree with these rulings. So I think if you're still on the fence about it, hopefully, if not Dion's Saturday discussion, we could at least ease your mind about these supposed changes.
Yeah, we'll end up seeing. And to respond to Yoda Taco, if you were in a place where people were flaming, because here's the thing, there may have been opinions on it, but if you lead it with AMG is stupid, and then give your opinion, like think about a personal interaction, right? Like you don't, hi, dummy, and then try to have a real conversation with them, right? I'm sure there were plenty of good points, but when you lead it with with insults, it's usually not great. If you gave a well-constructed opinion, take out the unnecessary and then put it in, and then go from there.
Doesn't
So
have to just start with the "you're a dummy" part. You know, you could have a well, concise, constructed whole thesis, and in conclusion, you are stupid.
right,
Paraphrasing, but
right.
doesn't matter where it is. Now, granted, I get what Will's saying, right? There were people trying to bring up good points along the weekend. It just got drowned in all of the craziness, right? So
Right.
you were trying to quell the crazy, but also trying to, figure out and journey where you're discovering your own opinions on it at the same time. So
Right.
it was tough.
Yeah. Okay. So now the first part I want to hit here, and Will, one of the things I talked about on Saturday was my big question that I wrote at the end. My question was, why? Like this, I don't know about you guys. Like, I know when they mentioned random player order, I would have never, like, you give me, somebody asked me a question, what could you guess random player order means? I would have never put this one on the list.
You say that, but I think you're actually the closest. You had mentioned at one point in time that they would want both players involved.
Right. I did say that, but not I did, like, after the dial, I was like,
right.
I was like,
to say this was bold.
right.
Yeah.
Baseline.
Very bold choices.
Right. I had that like, my goodness. When I read it, I was like, oh, this is interesting. So
Pardon me.
we'll start with you. Take some guesses. Why?
All right.
Why do you think?
What we're looking for is the objectives that these new rules are trying to accomplish.
Right.
And obviously, as we've been playing X-Wing, it's kind of an issue that's been on the back burner, but obviously the who's first player, who's second player has determined many a game. And with like bidding being like essentially just put into like a list building function, it was always perceived as an upgrade you took. I'm taking a 20-point upgrade that says I move after you, right? We kind of accepted that. But now that we've actually been doing a lot of experimenting with random player order for the entire game, we've seen that when two lists are randomly chosen like that, it can significantly favor the second player. Whether you're a turret or an ace or a jousting block, it does impact the game. So to try to correct that issue where second player had a higher win percentage, these rules are looking to find a way to allow both players to be second player. I can see why they didn't want to go with, say, like a set, like alternating way of doing it, because then you know that next, if I just wait this turn, the next turn I'll have the information, right? So you kind of get into this rhythm to where every other round players wouldn't want to engage. So without that information, both players are at a disadvantage coming into activation because they, for their dials at least, didn't know the exact situation that would occur. And essentially, instead of giving one player all the information, it takes information away from both players then, at least for the setting of the dials until someone's moving second. What else do you guys think would be their objectives? I mean, is that solely the only thing that this is trying to correct, is second player having a massive advantage sometimes?
Ryan or
think-
Bristol? Go ahead.
I think it's not. I mean, so clearly, second player is the like focus because we know
Mhm.
people are willing to, like you said, spend quote upgrade points on a bid in previous X-wing. I just think baseline, the overall goal by AMG is basically to only use player order to help structure and move the game along turn by turn. It's not meant to be a core part of the tactics that you build any strategy around or have any strategic advantage that you can plan around as a player. They just want it there for the game to move on, to have structure, and to help build their rules around. But they don't want any player to take advantage of it in a planned manner that they know they'll have the advantage 100%. In this instance, the way they've implemented this rule, like you said, both players not exactly at the disadvantage. They're both on the same playing field. They both don't know for sure what they're going to get. So that means you need to find the maneuvers that you feel are best for your ships to take based upon what you believe is going to work in one way or the other. You need to analyze on your board state, if I plan as if I'm second player, do the advantages outweigh what'll happen if I'm first player and I run into something, or I'm first player and I have to deal with it, right? So you have to figure out if planning to being whatever you want to have more, because there are some definitely instances where having first player in some matchups can allow you to be the blocker of a guaranteed maneuver that you're going to stop your opponent from doing that you know is going to be very important to block. So both sides. And I think just making sure both players are on an even playing field every single turn on the planning aspect of the game to lessen the advantage that any player can take is likely where they want to go. And you need to figure out as a player, does me planning on being first or second and going for that one outweigh what happens if I don't get what I want? And I think that's actually going to be a pretty good skill to develop in this new meta, new rule set.
Marcel, anything you want to add on the kind of the guesses why?
So no, and
Okay, so I don't
no,
want to go into your personal feelings yet. I'm
I'm not going into personal feelings.
Oh, okay. This ain't personal.
It will be.
This business.
It will be. Yeah, if you think I'm going to let you get off this one without my opinion, I don't think you know me well enough, which you do, so you know. Anyway, no. The reason I don't have it is because I make it a point not to try to guess intent on someone else's part. So I can, if I was developing it, I can probably try to theorize why this is a thing, and I think Ryan probably articulated it in the best way that I've heard anybody articulate it to this point yet. So but that's Ryan's assumption. That's so I don't know what they're thinking. I question the execution regardless of what they're thinking, and we'll get to that later. That's honestly, more than the change, that's my biggest issue. So let's just hope. I mean, not hope. Let's.
No, we're gonna hit that. We're gonna hit that.
That's the execution, because that is everything that happened this weekend was avoidable from a marketing and communication standpoint of running a business. It was avoidable. You turned your own community against itself. And that's the part that's on the execution of it, regardless of the intent of the changes, regardless if the changes are good or bad, because we don't know. I played 2 games today. I have one game. It didn't matter. One game, it mattered completely, and I had a different experience than Kent to what was going on. So we'll get into that in a second, but. Just later on, we can get into the execution of the messaging around it. But as far as intent, what their intent was of why they made those changes, I don't know. I do know that, some people that I trust that, No, well, let's just say no, it was blindsided. It was unexpected by many people,
Yep.
and so I have no idea what they were thinking. I'm sure that they weren't thinking anything negative. Now, going back to the people that are saying like these people are terrible people, they're trying to destroy the game. That's ludicrous.
Right.
There was no nefarious reasons for it. That is guaranteed. Whatever their thinking was, there was good intentions behind of what they were thinking. I don't know what that thought was though.
Right. Well, Marcel, you're so good at transitions. You didn't even know that's where we were going next. And I want to talk about the execution, because that was something else that I talked a little bit about on Saturday. Is like they kind of they dropped what is a potential major change and just kind of walked away from it. Like there was, and then we talked about the stream not happening on Thursday. You know, before I bring up this other thing I was going to say, let's go ahead and let's flip it back this way. There you go, that way. Marcel, talk about your thoughts on the execution on the release of this information.
Sure, and this is strictly from a just
From the business
standpoint.
yeah,
from a communication standpoint. For the same reason why you never launch a website or an app on a Friday. You don't start a Cubano unless it's, Good Friday. Not Good Friday. Is it Good Friday? No, Black Friday. There you go. Unless it's Black Friday, you don't start a major discount on a Friday. Like there's many things you don't do on a Friday because the support is not there for the weekend from the people that are there to take care of it. So you don't have enough time to react and adjust if the communication that you put out has an unexpected or negative response. And I think if you just look, Ryan, there was 893 before they locked that thread. So there was 893 comments on it. And there was those little happy faces, like, how are you feeling about it? I think there was 300 angry faces and 100 likes, two hearts and like 20,000, crying faces or whatever. It was very geared towards one end. And it created an environment where there was very polarizing opinions on this is negative, this is bad, this is the worst thing that AMG or any company can ever do to a game. They're destroying it. And then that created that counter effect of you're bad for saying they're bad, and give them a chance, and this is good, and I can see, and then trying to basically justify or them themselves without testing it is I believe this could be the best thing. I believe it can be great. And now you have the other school of thought.
You created factionism, right?
Exactly.
You created factionism within the community,
saying this is going to be great only because you're trying to. I think William mentioned it. You can't. William is not ready to defend it, but because he sees so much negativity, he feels like he needs to defend the individual, plumber and the individual developers. But in defending the individual plumbers, is I believe in what they're doing. No, I may not like what they're doing, but I'm defending. So it creates this, like you said, factionism, tribalism, or whatever you want to call it. And the first thing is don't do that on a Friday. Don't do it at the end of the day. Don't do it on a Friday. Don't do it any day. Do it on a Tuesday morning or something like that when you have all hands on deck to deal with whatever comes through it. And then once you see it going sideways, to just let the community continue to eat itself apart. You're talking about Ryan having being a running through midlife crisis 10 years ahead of time because of it or whatever. You're that environment could have very easily been resolved by somebody at AMG saying, hey, this is what we were going to play with Thursday. Nothing is official yet. These aren't the actual rules. It's not published. We will talk about it next Wednesday. They don't even have to give an answer. They can say, we will talk about it next Wednesday. Tune in. In the meantime, if you have any specific questions, and use that as an opportunity to kind of field the because if you phrase it that way, at that point you're no longer getting the oh, you guys are trying to kill X-Wing, you don't know anything, you don't know how to play, you don't know how to game design, blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
By phrasing it as, hey, you know what, this is what we were going to try yesterday, we're going to have a discussion about it next week, and then sometime in December we're going to publish the rules. If you have any questions about this, any feedback, here's the method to provide that feedback. And just by nature of providing that, you're going to get more constructive feedback from the people that hate it, because then at that point they feel that they have some say in the matter. They feel like they can convince, like, hey, this is a bad idea because. So at that point, you change the energy of the conversation and you change the direction. First, you take it offline. Anytime there's a complaint, like, have you ever seen on Amazon when there's somebody who does a 1-star? It's never like, hey, you're wrong, you're doing it wrong, even if they are doing it wrong. Like, you have cat food and you fed the cat food to the dog, and it's like, hey, my dog hates it. Instead of going in there and saying, hey, you idiot, it's cat food, not for your dog. They're like, oh, let's have a discussion. Let's take it offline. Here's my email. Here's my phone number, and we'll talk to you, because it's taking it offline. Take the complaints offline.
Now, Marcel, I don't mean to interrupt your flow, but you're bringing up an interesting thing that I guess I haven't thought about today. Has there been a follow-up?
No.
At all? Any communication
there was
since?
multiple posts on AMG, and there were responses to X-Wing on AMG on some Legion posts.
What do you mean? What do you mean AMG? Like on their website or their forums?
On their Facebook page. So they were active on Facebook today, and they were responding to things, but they were responding to questions that were like, hey, this was supposed to be released on this date. I don't see that in my store. Is it still available? So they were answering like those type of customer service type questions.
Yeah,
but nothing.
The posts today were Legion based and Marvel Crisis Protocol based today, so they were fielding those questions.
And there were some questions about X-Wing, but the questions that they answered about X-Wing were not about rules. It was about distribution.
I'm not trying to get the pitchforks out for them yet or anything, but it was something I was wondering in case I hadn't seen the latest information.
Yeah. No, they were active, just not specifically about this topic. And that's what I was saying. Like, there's ways to, in public relations and marketing communications, there's ways to de-escalate a conversation to make sure that the audience or the customer doesn't basically create negativity and toxicity that's ultimately going to hurt the brand. Take it offline, give them an avenue, make people be heard. I think that's the number one thing, because if someone is yelling and they're not acknowledged, they're going to yell louder. And if they're still not acknowledged, they're going to go on Facebook and leave you bad reviews. I mean, that's kind of like they're trying to escalate their yelling and increase their voice until they are heard. Again, by putting out a message saying like, hey, we hear all the commotion. This is it. We'll talk to you guys next Thursday. Here's the avenue to provide feedback. If you think, we're going, if you think anything about it, positive, like it, hate it, test it out. Here's the Google form to write a review. I mean, anybody can do a Google form, right? Here's the Google form to write a review. It changes that whole conversation. Nobody leaves nasty messages. I mean, they might still. I mean, they will still. It's Facebook, but not to that same extent. And it just lowers the temperament because people got hurt. It's like, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to communicate it. And then when they come back Wednesday or Thursday to talk more about it, now they got feedback. Now they know, like, people's legitimate. Maybe this is the way that it's going to end up, and they determine like, hey, you know what, this is how we feel it's going to end up, because this is our, we don't know what they're developing in the future. We don't know what they're already starting to think past what FFG developed, and they're like, well, we want to develop these other things in the future, these scenarios, these other new ships, new abilities, and knowing who moves first for this particular ability just completely breaks the game. So this will open, we don't know that, but it gives them the opportunity to field everything, see which questions. It doesn't take a lot of data science, and you don't even need like SQL database. It doesn't take a lot to basically just put it into a word cloud. Like, all your responsive, you get 1,000 responses, throw it into a word cloud, and say, okay, these are the 5 topics that people are most angry about, and and that way it gives you a chance to prepare your questions ahead of time. So anyway, I've been talking for a long time. I make a pretty decent living on it because I tend to do okay at marketing communications and stuff like that. I don't expect everyone to have, you know, a whole agency, New York style agency behind them. It's a small shop that's doing it, but it's some very, very, very basic, things that companies can do to basically avoid this
Right.
craziness.
And just for reference, like you're saying, you're coming from a professional standpoint and experience in an actual business world. So just for anybody who's wondering, like, why does Marcel, like, where is he coming from? He's not pulling this out of his butt. I mean, maybe a little, maybe for fun, but
sometimes yeah.
just for reference there. Now, can I give you a couple of my just before again we get into our opinions on it. I have a couple of I wonders. So I do agree the timing wasn't great, and it all the things that Marcel said, I 100% agree with. When it comes to the why and what we might end up with in the future, whatever that might end up being, I was having a discussion with a source that cannot be named, but essentially some of the same things you were saying, right? Is this announced thing that they were going to do was unexpected, and there have been other things that were being tested, including what people have now referred to as root, a round order. I forgot what the other O and the T was, basically for the whole game. Random order, something. I forgot. Maui came up with root. I forgot what his acronym was, but basically what we've been doing in Galaxies, determining the order at the beginning of the game and keeping it that way. Do you think, okay, for fun here, so they announced this random order before dials, or after dials, excuse me. And then they come back to us and say something along the lines, we messed up, we're changing it to before dials. We're still rolling every turn, but we're changing it to before dials. I have this kind of like, what I wrote down is like other timeline fantasy of just kind of wondering what that world looks like where they go now, like the reaction going from after dials to before dials, still same method, but it just changes the timing, right? And what the community reaction is versus if they had led with before dials. Just kind of, this is not really asking a question. This is just me kind of going, I wonder. Not sure if you guys have a reaction. Not really expecting a reply to that, but it's just something in the back of my head wonders if we end up there, kind of like a compromise, would we be okay with that? Kind of just like, all right, that's better than it was. If you're coming from that negative side or from disagreeing. So
I hope that whatever AMG might change or shift to, that they allow the time to really be part of the X-Wing game. I don't want a week from now for them to revert. I want it to play out. Let it go. Try it completely. Have a full season up to the next point change, full year. Who knows? I assume a lot of what they're changing right now is going to be reflected in new cards and new ships that AMG comes up with. They're building the foundation to what they're going to develop in the future. I don't expect this to change. If it does, okay, but I hope they give it the time to have its life expectancy, I guess. I don't know what that is, but I hope it's not a week.
Could this be an opportunity for like public beta? You know what I mean? Kind of like we had these ideas. Help us out. Here's a Google form. And you got to make sure, I've been saying this before, writing a survey that actually gives you information is really, really hard. It's really difficult to ask the right questions. But if you can come up with that, you could potentially have some type of public beta where you're like, all right, guys, this is what we are testing. Help us out. Submit your games, and that could be a way to maybe get people involved. I know it's been done with other war games in the past. Not sure. And AMG likes their Google Forms. They've used them before, but just an interesting thought of maybe one way they could go about when I say rectify, what I'm saying is trying to healing, because the things that Marcel was saying, the wounds that have been opened, you got to figure out how to fix that, right? I'm almost sure if they didn't have meetings today about what happened, that's a problem, right? Because they have to react somehow. But I'm curious to know, and obviously we'll get to see how they're going to go about it. I mean, you could use the ostrich method, right? Stick your head in the sand, pretend like nothing happened, and you just do it. It works It works sometimes. There you go, Marcel. But yeah, we can only wait and see. And I want to see what the reaction to the customer base is going to be, because I think the reality is, right, if you're thinking about dollars and cents, the players who are on the side of I'm okay with this, right, anywhere from like on the spectrum of fine, whatever, to I love it. Anybody on that spectrum would likely be okay if AMG shifted it, right? It's the people on the other side, those people's money, where you're like, we got to make sure we keep those people's money, right? It's just from a business standpoint, because I don't know how much I believe people who've been like, if they go through this, I'm quitting X-Wing. I don't know how many will actually do it. But as a business, that's one thing that makes you open your eyes, right? Is okay, people are saying that they're willing to not buy our product. That seems problematic. Yeah, that's just a little thoughts from the back of my head. But let me be quiet now. I want to know how you guys feel about it. Ryan, you have something to say before we hit this?
Yeah, before we do a full transition, just a couple, I don't want to say full devil's advocate, but other perspective of some of the things Marcel brought up earlier on the marketing side. At baseline, 100%. I agree that these should have came out with the rules reference, and then that stream they had the next day where they were fielding questions, that would have been the opportune moment to go through their explanations and thoughts, right? That alone, I mean, it's not on a Friday, like Marcel said, got rid of that problem. And we have interaction right away, a day after, where people can talk about it after already talking amongst themselves with the community, right? That could have been done as a baseline. But I will say, because of what I saw over the weekend and some of the aggressiveness from the X-Wing community about wanting to get answers, what does FFG owe the X-Wing community that is so headstrong? Sorry, AMG. What does AMG owe to these X-Wing community that is so hard to talk to at that point in time? You say, like, let's put out a survey, let's talk with them directly. Man, I saw a Twitter post that was like, hey, we're announcing these dates for Legion. One of the first comments were like, can you please explain the thing on X-Wing? Or like, we would like to know more about the X-Wing thing. I've seen people say we need to go on, on their Twitch chats during painting and like ask them and pester them over and over to get what we want. From the developer's perspective, can you imagine trying to come out the next day or offer a day during the week after saying, we'd like you to voice your questions to us so we can field them back? And I don't know how long it would take before the negativity settles to allow that conversation to be had. Not saying it can't, and people can't maybe be more professional or cordial about it. But man, as a community, we did not put our best foot forward to being a welcoming community for that type of interaction from AMG at all. At least the loudest part of us, right? Which is unfortunately a minority of our community. Most of our community has been very good, just in general in the past. They haven't been that vitriolic, but on AMG side, I can't imagine trying to set that up. And in terms of, yes, it can be easy to set up a Google survey or something online, but as you know, on a business standpoint, whoever's setting up your pay for everyone, right? There's time, there's resources, and there's quality and speed. You don't get all, was it 3 or 4, whatever. There's the holy triangle of business, and you get 2 out of the 3. You don't get all 3.
Right.
Speed, quality, and whatever.
Resources.
And Marcel will resources or whatever. But either way, it's probably wasn't exactly on their scheduler books to have a triage team at this point. So, I mean, again, that's on them originally to have presented this in a better manner. Like I don't know between when they had the rules reference update to that post on Friday, why they couldn't be together. Like, I don't know what the time difference was between that for them to have that finalized. Just maybe something I don't know that they had to deal with, but it would feel like it make more sense that you have it on the rules reference update and then your proposed Twitch chat after, which that may have devolved, unfortunately, like my mindset might have right now. And at least when I go back to my point on wanting AMG to stick with this for a while, I just want to have the courage of their conviction, right? They put this down and said, this is what it's going to be. I will lose a little bit of respect if they back off too soon, just because of everyone going a little bit too crazy. But there have been some people who've put up some good points and their opinions about the game and how their view is from their perspective, and that should still be respected as well. But if I'm AMG, I just how can you on the business end, if you're on a PR department on a marketing side, whatever perspective you want to take it, how do you expect them to respond that quickly to the X-Wing community without them likely getting another 800 comments of just flame wars?
So there is a way to do that without looking, I don't know, without the perception of looking bad or however you want to put it, or that you're, bending to the will of toxicity. So now if you bend to the people yelling, then people will just yell louder next time they don't get what they want. It's kind of like negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement of negative actions. But there's also a way to do it where they can just say, hey, we heard you loud and clear. This is what we believe in. This is what we worked on. This is what we tested. And this is what we believe will be there. However, we will review it. Just when we do the points change, we review the points change. We will review this. And if it, after playing it, after giving it a shot, if we see that it needs some tweaking and adjustment, we will make those tweaks and adjustments. So that is a way, to do a compromise that doesn't, you don't back away from your initial intent, but you're also letting people that are yelling know that they're being heard, and that, basically give it a try, and we're going to review. Again, it goes back, just communicate. It goes back to one, communicate, and second, communicate better. I mean, you can't communicate better without communicating at all. And I think that's probably what's hurting them the most is just the radio silence. Radio silence is just, when you're silent, think about your kids, because you Ryan, you said, like, we're acting like children as a community, right? We're acting like spoiled kids who aren't getting their cookie, or they're not getting to, they want to go to Disneyland and Disneyland is closed today, but you don't care. You want Disneyland. I want Disneyland. So, what happens when if they're saying like, mama, 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 you're grabbing on your mama's pant leg and saying, mama, 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 mama. If you ignore the mama's just going to get louder and the tug is going to get harder. Mama, 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 mama. Like, you can do two things at that point. You can like smack the hand away, like leave me alone. You ain't getting no dessert tonight. Or you can say, hey, I heard you. Disneyland's gonna be open tomorrow. Let's talk about it tomorrow. If you behave today, maybe tomorrow we can go to Disneyland. Like, oh, I'm gonna be nice today because I want to go to Disneyland tomorrow. So there's ways to handle it. If a community is acting childish, you don't need to be a marketing expert. You just need to be, I'm sure at least one of them is a parent. Like, hey, you just treat them the same way you would treat your, a kid that's being a brat. Just listen to them, communicate to them, and tell them like, hey, there's something in the future that you can look forward to. Behave today, and maybe you might get a candy tomorrow.
And to use your analogy, I think one of the other things that exacerbated people's reaction is that X-Wing feels a little bit like the kid under the stairs. All right, just a little bit, right? Obviously, my Marvel Crisis Protocol is the favorite, right? It's very obvious, and I know that it's been an adjustment coming from FFG, where specifically talking about their website. How when they would release information, like they kind of had this constant news cycle going about all their games, right? So it's one of those, Marcel, to kind of go back to your point, is it's not that they are not necessarily, they don't know how to communicate. They have shown that they have the ability to, but to kind of combine Ryan's point and your point, it's not on their calendar yet, and maybe it's something that needs to be adjusted. We don't know what their plans are, but I'm curious to see what ends up happening. It's what my hope is that AMG soon can improve their communication. Just period right there. I think it does need to be improved, but we're going to move on to our next topic. That way people can click forward to this point right now that they probably want to actually hear, and that's our thoughts on this, okay?
And the first hour was probably the more important one, because people want to know, like,
right, they want to know this. Tell
us
why you don't like it or you like it, okay? So let's start with just a yes or a no, okay? We'll do visual, thumbs up, thumbs down, okay? And then we'll give further explanation. And the question...
How about your audio listeners?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're going to need audio.
Well, we're going to do both. We're going to do both. I will read out the votes. It's a public vote, okay? Public vote. Just so that we can see where we stand to get started with. That way, the person who just wants to come to here, see that, and go away, they can do that too, all right? So my question is... do you like it or do you not like it? So 3, 2, 1, go. All right. All right, so myself and Marcel were thumbs down, Ryan thumbs up, and Will was in the middle and headed to the top. Okay, so that's where we are as of today, November 1st, 2021. We are malleable people. Our thoughts may change over time. And this is, again, this is where we are today. So this is what we'll do. We'll go Will, Marcel, Ryan, and then me. All right? We balance it out. All right? So Will, let us know your thoughts on random player order after dials.
Okay, so I do want to start with the explanation that I am mixed right now. I haven't personally played it, but I play a lot of X-Wing in my brain, if that makes sense. A lot of theory crafting, a lot of scenarios I run through. So I have a lot of ideas about it. But I will preface, though, I don't know if we mentioned this, so I want to mention it now while I have the soapbox. First off, the 3 dice rolled for each player, right? I originally was like, just like everybody, like, what? Wait, a waste of time. like what, why 3, blah, blah, blah. But then thinking about it more, 3 dice creates, the way they've done it, the crits, eyeballs, whatever, it hopefully creates a situation where you only had to roll once. Okay, that's why 3 dice. Why not just like flip a coin? Well, what if you're playing with more than 2 people? Why write extra rules when you don't have to? When you can include the rules for additional players and ties right in the rules without even mentioning how many players are looking to be first or second or third or whatever, so on and so on. So I really liked that after asking those why questions. I really liked that it was simplified is not the right word. Cohesive, maybe, concise, or no. Like complete is what I'm trying to say. That there would be no additional rules ever added to that. It would be enough to move on. So actually, I really like that. That those could be forever, and we've never had to change them again. But moving on to when it happens after dials. To me, this was what really got me. Like, I can accept random, like whatever, like let's, I can figure it out. But the after the dials is hard to wrap your brain around because it takes away, what do I want to say, the gamble, right? Where in poker, I have 2 aces in my hand, or let's say I have 2 kings in my hand, pocket kings, right? And queen comes out on the board, right? We're playing Hold'em. And that, if you don't understand, is an amazing hand. Right off the bat, you have a great hand, but there's a hand that could beat you. Someone else having 2 aces, right? So you take that information.
Or someone having a queen.
Oh, right, or a queen. Well, wait, yeah, queen. Four of a kind beats a full house. Right, but you're taking the board information, inferring what you want to do and what your own personal game state is, and then applying it to your strategy moving forward. But now, imagine you had to every round of poker, they would, because I know you do it in the first round, but imagine you had to place bets without knowing those cards, without knowing the game state. You had to place your bets all in. Are you folding right away? You just turning away from the fight because you can't risk not knowing. So that is comprehensive. Man, thank you. Finally got it. But that is nerve-wracking to me because we've played the game so much with that information and wanting to take that information, put it through our brain, and then output something that we know of, right? And without that information, it's very difficult to progress. Now, I wouldn't say very difficult, but it leaves it more up to how much are you willing to gamble. And I like the word gamble instead of chance because leaving it up to chance just blames the dice. It's how much are you willing to gamble? Are you going all in on that K turn? Or are you gonna, minimum bet the one forward, right? And that to me is nerve-wracking. Like, I don't want to play games when I can't take those big risks. Everybody knows that, like, oh man, you called my one bank and K turned right over me. I was like, I sure did, because I saw the game state and I knew what you were gonna do, so I was able to react. Not new, but like I had a better assumption of what my opponent was gonna do. Now, my opinions on that, taking all that information in, my opinions on that are negative. The equal sign goes into a negative because I think that willingness to not gamble favors certain ships and play styles who have always never take risks. I'll hit the big 3 here, which is passive mods. We're talking force, natural rerolls, things like that. And then the other one would be turrets. Turrets, man, if you haven't played X-Wing in like since like first edition times, the dark times, turrets were everywhere. There was some, I forget who did it, but turrets were like a very high number of successful lists, and they were always predominant throughout all of X-Wing, right? And I thought second edition was going to get away from them, or at least depower them, and they've started to. But they're another ship archetype that doesn't care if they're moving first or last, because they're flying away from you. So it doesn't matter. There's nothing in front of them to bump into, because they're shooting out the side or the rear or whatever. And then the other one that is things that change your dial. And I'm kind of lumping in like preposition into this, because that essentially changes your dial, right? Like Kylo's hard supernatural hard 2 isn't what his dial says. It's 16 different places or whatever, right, that he dialed in. And that's another archetype that favors this change of not having information until you move. And that's, to me, that's what hurts, is that I thought with second edition, we were getting away from these things, that we were trying to create a better dogfighting game than just who's the biggest turret with the most mods. And so I think that's what hurts. I think like short term it'll be fine, like whatever, like no one's gonna care. But like how do we, well, people are gonna care. The games aren't gonna care as much. Most of your games won't have this applied to them. That's my positive, I guess. But the fact that, in my opinion, this might just be my opinion, but I think that these rules only favor the worst parts of X-Wing, and that scares me. I don't like that. I wish the rule set would favor the kind of X-Wing where we're dogfighting, we're taking big gambles, taking big risks, and I don't think that this encourages big gambles. That it encourages, a lot of mods and what do I say? More of what's the opposite of gambling? Conservative, I guess. A more conservative play style.
Safe, yeah.
Safe, conservative, yeah. And unfortunately, to me right now, that's where I think that these rules are going. That they are encouraging a safe play style, and that's where I'm supposed to be choosing violence, okay? And how can I choose violence if we're all playing it safe?
All right, I think for flow, we're gonna go to Ryan next.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I want to remind everyone that this rule only affects when you have the same initiative of two ships that interact at the same time of either certain parts of the game, whether it's activation phase, system phase, activation phase, all that stuff, right? Everything else is the same. If you have a game where no one has same initiative, which can happen, it's not uncommon. This doesn't do anything. Does nothing. If you do, now you just have taken away, like I mentioned prior, the ability for someone to plan on having the advantage of player order one way or the other. So both players are on the same playing field. You can still gamble and risk pretty hard on some stuff. Like I said, it's the risk assessment you have to decide, am I going to take this risk on saying, I'm going to dial this maneuver, hoping I get this player. If I get this, the risk of taking is going to outweigh the negatives if I don't get the player order I want, right? In terms of other things that are going to evolve from this, obviously system phase repositions, ailerons are going, and movement repositions are going to be things that are going to potentially be used more now. I like the idea of more system phase reposition stuff because I think that's actually cooler and takes a better trained eye in this game to look at and do a maneuver in the system before you do an actual maneuver on your dial. A lot of people are used to dial maneuver and then do your booster barrels. And I just think I think initially, yes, some people are going to be more conservative about it because they're not used to it. They're going to be safer. They're not going to take those risks. But eventually, over time, I think it's going to develop that the people that learn to take the risks at the correct times or when they can and assess it, like I said, when something can be done and still end up taking the negative and it not being as bad as you actually thought it would be, depending on what your opponent decided to turn in on or look at, depending on how you set up the game state and how it is. You could take those risks again. We've all taken those risks in any manner. The problem was because of how player order was set up, when you had the knowledge of what you were, second player a lot of time wasn't taking risks. They were doing a maneuver and they were repositioning their action. They were doing the reposition actions based upon what the other opponent did first. That is not a risk. That is a calculated move to do and then react because you have the later knowledge of what your opponent has done and can react accordingly. You can still do that at higher initiatives versus low initiative stuff. That is not affected by this at all whatsoever. And it's possible to have swarm-ish based lists with same initiative go at each other, and that could feel like a mess because someone could plan on doing a bunch of same maneuver 2 straights and the other person can dial in a bunch of 5 straights, one to block the 2 straights and it goes the other way, and it's all a giant mess. I don't know the last time I saw a swarm mirror match, to be quite honest, but that's here nor there, and my thoughts on fleeting swarm play at this point. Overall, I think it'll be tough for people to get used to. It is going to feel like a different game because as much as Marcel wants to get away before this happened, that this is not a new 2-point whatever of X-Wing. It's still just X-Wing. It's not a new day, a new era. It's going to be. This is a ground shaking rule change that changes how we are going to have to do our risk assessment from turn to turn. And I think people who can correctly risk assess are going to rise above the people who don't. It's just as much us doing our actions to mitigate the dice and the variance there as much as our decisions in the planning phase are going to mitigate the variance potential of the player order.
All right. Thank you. Marcel.
All right. So first, I've got notes. I was even making notes while you were talking, Ryan. I'm a note taker. Risk. I wrote here, like, when you were talking about risk and taking that risk, like, hey, I'm gonna guess that you're gonna do a 1 bank, and I'm gonna K turn behind you, and you're saying, like, well, you're taking that risk and you're taking that gamble that I'm guessing where you're gonna be. The difference in RPOAD, let's call it random player order after dials, is that now you're not only guessing, you're not only taking the guess, like, hey, I'm guessing and I'm taking a gamble, I'm taking a risk on what you're going to do, which is completely it is completely based on my choices and your choices. It is completely, unless you're playing against Dion, his face tells everything, and then it's just, you might as well have Cassian Andor.
Stop looking at me.
But it's not just like the gamble is not just I can guess what you're going to do, and I'm going to do something that's going to counter it and be better at it. It is now adding an additional element of, okay, I'm going to guess that you're going to do a 1 bank, and I'm going to K turn behind you. If you don't do that, I'm going to get blocked, face the wrong way, and I'm going to get destroyed. Now I'm going to guess that you're going to do that 1 bank, and then I'm going to hope and pray that you move first so that my 1K fits, or if it's the other way around, is that I move first so that my 1K fits, and then you're going to jump right in front of me. So it's taking that gamble of my intuition and my reading of the game says that I'm going to make this choice because I believe you're going to make that choice, and then it randomizes the result based on a dice roll. So that's where me and most other players, like Will was saying, are going to default to the more safe. Okay, you know what? If I K turn here and it's before he moves, he's gonna hop over me if I guess the right one. If I guess the wrong one, he's gonna bump into me, and I'm gonna be safe either way. But if he moves first because of random order, and you set your dial, now you're facing the wrong way, and you're just completely messed up because of randomness, because of variance, and that's where that's one of the biggest issues that I have. And uh, not to call out names, but like a specific national champion has been going around saying like it's going to require more skill. It's going to require more skill. It's going to require more skill because you have to do all these different, mental gymnastics of planning ahead, and you're going to have to plan for, what if this and what if that, what if this, what if that. I agree that it's still going to require skill. You're going to have to think. Most of the right answers will probably be the safe answer because you have to guess what the other opponent's doing. Plus, then you have to hope that the die gives you what you want to do. But the point that I was trying to make in all those posts were anytime that you roll dice, you're adding variance, right? You're taking your agency, as the crates like to say, you're taking your agency away because you have no control. You have no control. Hopefully, you have no control over the result of that dice being rolled. So just that itself is variance. Variance is basically what we define as luck. The more luck that you put into the result of the game, if you have 100% split of 50-50, 50% luck, 50% skill, and that's what you have, if you make more phases and more opportunities for luck to be a factor, by just definition, you are making skill a smaller percentage of that. So the more things that you have to roll to the more things you have to rely on variance, the less things that you are taken away from the actual skill and choices of the game, which is what most of us really, really enjoy. Is the meaningful. It's how meaningful the dials are, and then you multiply that by the fact that now the randomness doesn't happen before you set your dial. The randomness happens after you set your dial. So then it becomes exponential because now you're making decisions based on, before you were making, if you do random player order before dials, that still adds randomness, but that randomness becomes a little bit more even because, the weight of rolling a die at the beginning of the game is equivalent to winning that dice result the whole game before dials. So it's like if you play 12 rounds, that means you won the dice result 12 rounds and you move second 12 rounds. So I understand splitting up that level of variance of who moves first and second, so that way there's less gap of okay, Dion rolled hit, so he's at a disadvantage for 12 rounds versus Dion rolled hit 7 out of 12 rounds, so now he's a slight advantage. But when it happens after dials are set, at that point, even your dial is based on variance. Even the choice that you made to move is based on variance. So the way that you're going to counter that, and this goes back to the point that Will was trying to make, is the way that you're going to counter it is you're going to counter it by building your list that basically doesn't care. Doesn't care whether they move first or second. So you're going to get less of those Sunterfell type lists, Von Reg type lists. You're going to get a lot more force because if you bump or don't bump, you have the opportunity to reposition. Before you have if you bump, you still have your tokens. Or like the game that I played, the 2 games that I played today against Kent, is Kent brought a list that he typically flies, which is 3 X1s with a defender. And the 3 X1s basically move in, target lock, rely on the 3 dice, and do their thing. I built specifically for this random player order after dials, and I put 2 U wings that can coordinate each other at different initiatives. I had the 2 NGO 2 tubes and the other 2 tubes that basically get 4 actions combined. As a result of it, I had Leia, which lets me stop and guarantee the actions when I require the actions. So I had soft mods. I had mods for days, and the result was I tabled him in one, and then in the other one, it was like he killed, I think, only Lieutenant Blunt. And the reason was because my list didn't really care whether I won or not. I was always going to have mods, and I was always going to be able to adjust. And that's the type of list building that it'll shift to. It'll shift to ships that go away and don't bump, and it'll shift towards lists that if they bump, I had Heftober as part of that. Like Heftober is okay. If I move first, I get my action. If I move second, then I'll get coordinated. There's ways to mitigate all that. So it's going to create a lot more of that. Okay, these are the ships that are good into this format. These are the ships that are not. And for example, one ship that will 100% suffer, and it's already suffering, is Fenral. Initiative 6 Fenral. Why would you ever fly Fenral if you're not going to know if you have to boost in to range 1 or range 2, if you're not going to know if you're going to bump? I mean, there's very little things that Fenral. I mean, he just wants to. Well, actually, Fenral is probably a bad example because he actually likes being at range 1, and when he bumps, he still
I
has.
was going to say, like, Fenrir is one of the most mitigating I6s to move first, actually, because he's so defensive.
No,
Even if somebody lands at range
I caught
1
myself on that, but you get the point. Like ships that need to, because Fenrir only doesn't even double reposition; it just single.
Von Reg is really sad about moving first.
But to the point. But what I'm getting at, and thanks, Ryan. What I'm getting at is just that it takes this more, and it decreases the gap between players that are just playing it safe and starting out and just getting randomness, and the other players, which is probably what they want. I'm not. We're talking about. I said I'm not thinking about what their intention is, but that's a result. I mean, if you go with chess, where there is absolutely zero randomness, everything is based on skill. Then when you're doing that, somebody that has 5 years experience or somebody that's savant will never ever lose to somebody who is new at the game. It's just not going to happen because there's no variance, and the player that knows more and that has more skill and has more practice will win 100% of the time. In XTC,
can I comment about chess for a second? There actually is randomness. In chess, white goes first, and that's randomly decided who's white and who's black. And white does have a way better win percent, not way, but like a more consistent win percentage than black does. So even in a game that is pure skill, that small
the
chance,
movement, and that's movement order, but still the
just wanted to touch on them.
Yeah, but the point that I'm trying to make is even in those scenarios, somebody who's been playing the game for a while versus somebody who's new, or somebody who is at elite,
that
at
I
world
can't agree
champion,
with.
and
they'll have a strategy for black, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they'll know what they're doing, and the person who's starting out, unless it's some savant, will not. And I was going back to Ali because I always like to dog on Ali. Ali, world champion, lost in an ultra competitive environment to a person who had 2 games ever under his belt. Why does that happen? Because it's variance. That's because it's variance. The there's that's not chess. So that's fine. That's why we like X-Wing, because you get those dice results and you're like, oh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? But at some point, you're gonna add so much of that to the equation that it is like, okay, oh god, I don't want to. I'm getting way too long-winded already. Anyway, it's gonna make the dials matter less. Is the point. Final result about the 2 games that we played earlier. Again, my list cared less about that. It was built better for this environment versus his list. His feedback was, you know what? I made moves that I normally wouldn't make. He likes the change, by the way, so he wasn't against the change. But he said, I made moves that I normally wouldn't make because my list kind of doesn't survive a joust very well. So I was ultra defensive, and being ultra defensive kind of bit me in the butt. But I played differently as a result. Me, I played the exact same way that I would play. I didn't really set different dials. I've made the same dials that I would normally make. I just made the dials that I thought would put me in the best position. And I won both games. I still feel like I did not enjoy it because when I set those dials, I knew that it just felt like less pressure, less weight on the dial. Like I don't like, it gets to a point of like, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And you're going back and forth like, what is he going to do? And then you realize, well, it doesn't matter what he does because we still have to roll a die. Okay, whatever. I'll just put whatever. So it makes a little bit less important what I put on the dial. That's what I felt. That was just a feeling. And that's only based on 2 games. So it's not conclusive. It's just, to me, the dial felt less important today. Anyway, that was like, man, I've been talking a lot today. So, Dion.
No worries. No worries. I mean, this is what today was about. It's about this one thing, right? For myself, so all of us can agree that this is a fundamental change to the game, correct? Right? We can all agree that it is. I guess let me restate. It's a fundamental change to the way that the game has been playing since its inception. The way that competitive players, at least, have been. Those of us who spend time thinking about X-Wing have thought. And kind of the place where my mind goes is with this. What this change does is, while it still has the same skin and a lot of the same mechanics as the X-Wing that has been played for however many years X-Wing has been around now. Don't know that year off the top of my head. I almost feel like it is a different game. I don't know if it's a better or a worse game, but I do think it is a different game. One of the thoughts that came to mind was when we were at the Las Vegas Open. I promise this comes back around. Promise. And after we had been playing, and people were like, "Oh, Dion, you ever been to Vegas?" I said, "Nope, never been to Vegas." And there was a couple of guys who had been to casinos before, and they were explaining all the games to me. Right? This is how this game is played. This game, and all of them have a different level of information that you have, and a different level of risk that you are taking, or at least it felt that way. And this is coming from a novice in casino games. Okay, it's just kind of my perception. And one of the things that this change does is that it increases the risk, right? There's an increased amount of risk, and there are people who look at that risk, and that risk equals excitement for them. There are others who look at the risk and say, this is bad, I want to mitigate this, right? So, that's a really long-winded way to say that I do think it's a fundamental change to the game. And the question, the reason why I ended up with why as my core was this change. This wasn't something like the change. For instance, very few people, let me not say nobody, I don't want to offend anybody. Very few people have cared or have been discussing the gas cloud changes. Let's say only the gas cloud changes are what was that happened last week, happened over the weekend. You know, if we didn't get this random player order thing, there'd be people would be like, oh man, that kind of sucks for aces. I can't hide behind the cloud for that, for my 3 health Ada. You know, there'd be that kind of discussions that will come up, but not with the same passion that happened with this. And I think the closer you get to a fundamental change to the game, the larger reaction you're going to get, whether people agree or not, right? I've also seen the debate and the point being made, or the question being posed, that could this change be for new players? Like, could it encourage new players to play? That's something I'm having trouble wrapping my head around. But one of the things I noted on Saturday was that the document, the screenshots of the document that they gave us was from the rule book that is in the core set. And a point that somebody ended up bringing, and I don't know if they would make this massive of a change, a difference in it, but the core rule book states that the end of the game is when one person has lost all their ships. X-Wing scoring is part of the tournament rules. Like, how we score in a tournament is that. You know, my brain was saying, could they go that extreme of a change for tournament rules in terms of dials, and maybe this random order thing is just a core set box thing? Potentially. Then my mind went into, well, we know that they've talked a lot about. So I want to nip it in the bud, Nobby. Love you, fam. Yes, the tournament rules are built on the core rules. What I'm saying is that they could be different. Don't be facetious. You know, let me get the flow out. All right. So, anywho, shoot. Tournament rules. Talked about tournament rules. We know that they're also creating, at least they talked about that they wanted to focus on player order, right? Player order in regards, sorry, not player order. Shoot. Objectives. That's the word I was looking for. Objectives and different types of alternative play. All right. There are potential things, if their focus is really on that thematic play, that potentially on Thursday we may have not seen a dogfight. We may have been seeing an alternative format, which, if that was the case, we could end up feeling really dumb. if that ends up being the case, because they have already published this. That's why originally I said, hey, if we get some type of random order rolling, it's going to be this, because it showed up in all of their alternate formats when we've had the, like, you choose this path, you get this power up, you choose this path, you get that power up. It could end up being that. But if let me get to the crux of the point. If this ends up being how competitive play is played, I don't want to take away the fact that I know that there's some saying, well, it might be better for casual players. Maybe. I don't have the data on that. But the competitive game does matter for casual play, because in your friendly local game store, if if the majority of your players play in competitive events, when they play X-Wing at their store, most, not all, will want to play the competitive format. Even if they're building weird lists and they're not bringing the most meta-breaking thing, they will want to normally follow the process that is the tournament game. So I don't think dismissing the tournament play is a valid argument either. At least I know in the stores that I have been to in the Chicagoland area, that is what is done. Is it a good idea? Do I like it? I personally, the timing, not a fan. If they moved it to before Dials, I think that silences the people who end up saying, my skill, exclamation point, right? You silence those people, but you do end up potentially, and I have to say potentially, mitigating some of those problems where the advantage of first player, second player, being guaranteed the entire game. But if you were willing to pull it in that direction, it may be better just to make it alternating. One of the I said may, I don't know, but it may be for the sake of making making it cleaner. One of the arguments I've seen against that was like, well, I'll just be aggressive on this turn and then not on this turn. I don't know if X-Wing really works that way though, because you're always in constant motion. You're gonna turn to the left and then turn to the right? I can't visualize an aggressive on turn A and not aggressive on turn B. And if that's the anticipation, then there's a change of flow in the play. And this is where my last point ends up being. No matter what the change is, the game will change. If they're planning on changing it to either what we've been doing with GSP or anything else, the flow of the game is going to change. And you're going to lose people when there is change, no matter what. And you may gain people if history ends up saying that it was the right choice. But the problem is that you don't know until your game is either thriving or it's dead. Personally, I don't like it. We'll see where they end up.
Do you really gain people though? I mean,
maybe
you gain retention because a player does not pick up X-Wing because of the rules. A player picks up X-Wing because it's Star Wars and it's spaceships and the ships look really cool.
I agree.
Retention, like those new people may hang around a little bit longer if they don't get curb stomped or they don't feel like, oh, this is a scenario that is completely unwinnable. So you may have some retention in that regard, but you're not. There's ways to get to that without eliminating or reducing or something like that. Mm-hmm. The original or a high emphasis on choices made versus variants. So I think there's I just want to say, like, you're not going to get new players because of it, but you might get some additional retention if new players are not constantly just walking in and feeling like, why am I even trying this? Like, if you lose, unless your name is Dion, if you lose 20 times in a row, I'm not saying that this has to be facetious. I'm saying that because
I lost a bunch of times. Yeah, I lost 57 games before I won my first one.
Yeah. But most people will give up after like 5.
Right. And you know what? The reason I played those 57 games and lost every one is I thought the game was still exciting. But to go off your point, here's maybe a question that just came up. Is there, because the game is new to AMG, and really listen to what I'm saying, because I know this could be very easily parsed to be something that I'm not saying. Do I believe that AMG has an understanding of the rules and how the game is played and how effects happen? Yes. I say yes. That is their job. Okay? And I would expect them to do their job. But 2, they may not have understood how much this specific change would impact their customer base, their retention base. And that is where the misstep in this may have happened.
I would say, I think the misstep happened in the communication. I'm going to go back to the communication. I think that's the misstep. But I think they understand the game. They understand the rules of the game. They had to read the rules in order to rewrite the rules. I mean, anybody who says, like, you haven't done anything like that, that's just not true. I mean, you have to understand the game. What I think that it's potential that they don't understand is the motivation of the, like I said, I don't try to guess what they believe or what their intent is, their motivation. But I think that might be, if there was a misstep, it was probably a misstep. If there was a misstep, it was probably a misstep in understanding the motivation of the X-Wing player base and what, how much emphasis, and the people that are actively following on Facebook, on Twitter, on the streams, are the people that are invested in and basically really trying to find every, we talk about cheat templates. I mean, we talk about fractions of a centimeter in a cheat template, like the
You're
end
right.
of the, like, oh my God, I can get an extra millimeter with
Yes!
this template versus that
Let's
template.
go!
Let's do it. So we're talking about a game of inches, a game of millimeters, a game of like, oh God, I'm gonna take this little tiny advantage.
Right.
So that's the X-Wing community, and anything related to the choices and the impact of competitive play is what's going to drive the people that are engaged in social media. That doesn't mean that the people that are playing on their kitchen tables, which there are not millions, there are thousands of playing in their kitchen tables with their families. There are still people playing in their kitchen tables with 1.0. But those people are not the ones that are on your Facebook, on your Twitter. They're not the ones that are going to tournaments. They're not the ones that are following your Twitch channel. They're not the ones that are communicating back and forth, having a conversation with you. They're the ones that are buying a cool Star Wars game so they can put Luke on the table and shoot Darth Vader.
Right.
So that's that. If there was a misstep, I think it was in not understanding the rules, but not completely understanding or taking into account how heavily the game lends itself to, even the people that say they're not competitive, they're not the boisterous ones. They are the boisterous ones, but if you're boisterous, it's because you are competitive.
Right.
Let's just put it this way: if you don't care about winning or losing, and you're yelling, you care about winning or losing. I'm just saying.
Somebody in their car right now is like, "Oh, he just called me out." All right. So, there's a lot of sides to this argument. And there was a point that was brought up in the chat. This, and to go off of what you were saying, Marcel, is that there is a lot of depth to this game. There is a lot of depth to this game. And I want to be careful how I state this. There's plenty of things to get plenty of ways in this game to make what will be perceived as errors to the community, or to errors in the game to the community that will be perceived that way. And we've talked about before in game design that there are lots of levers that they have, right? So they can add and remove slots. They can change points on things. You can release product that changes your meta, or you can rewrite an errata rules. All right, and this is the square. We're in that part of the world where you can really shake things up in that rule writing change. One of the other things I've seen in the chat, people talking about like X cards, Y cards, and we brought it up as well, and Z cards have an advantage in this meta, right? This world where these rules exist, these ships have an advantage. I agree that exists, but that's going to exist no matter what the rules are. Like, there is going to be a meta. And I think the question surrounding that is, whatever the current constraints of our game are, is that a meta that you want to play in? That's everybody has their own, what's the word? Not resistance. Their own barometer where it's either interesting or not to them. But I think anybody who immediately dismisses it, I will say that, like, if they say, so for instance, I got several inbox messages that stated the following: Dion, if you make this change for Alderaan, I am going to any of the following: take away my sub from Twitch, not be a patron anymore, complain about you online, you're a bad person. You know, there's all this full range of, if you do X, I will do Y. If you are that person,
that's some weak sauce.
Correct. But it's reacting without evidence. So, yeah. That's what I got.
I think you should follow that up with, are you using it for Alderaan?
No.
Here's your transition.
No, we're not using it for Alderaan for the reason that when I sent out the initial invites, I said if AMG didn't have anything out by the 18th, we weren't going to switch. We were going to do what we were doing, which was random order determined at the beginning of the game, and it stays consistent throughout the entire game. Now, the gas clouds thing, we'll use it. Easy to implement. Whatever, that's fine. The chaff cloud rulings, yeah, we'll use it because now it actually makes sense. But the random player order, like I said, fundamentally changes the game. So this is basically, I think somebody used the word capstone. This Alderaan will be the capstone of that, and we will begin exploring other stuff after the battle for Alderaan. So we'll explore it afterwards, but until then, my mental X-Wing world and the stream will be on. It's determined at the beginning of the game, stays the whole way, and then after that, we'll go from there. Alrighty.
Can I hit on one philosophical point I came across earlier today that might point in on this one? I'm assuming you maybe haven't, but if you have, cool. You heard of the anchor effect or anchoring?
Maybe. Nothing comes to mind right when you say it. Maybe as you describe it.
Okay. The anchoring effect is a cognitive bias whereby an individual's decisions are influenced by a particular reference point or anchor. Once the value of the anchor is set, subsequent arguments, estimates, etc., made by an individual or group may change from what they would have otherwise have been without the anchor. Basically, we as X-Wing players have known X-Wing as is for all of its life up until this point, right? Changes to second edition occurred, happened, we moved on from there. Changes that just happened from AMG, similar. This is one of those change points, but like it feels like a really ground-shaking one, more than even a whole other edition was. So I think what we need to do, because it feels like the majority of the community has anchored themselves to the original structure of X-Wing and not letting go of it when viewing a new structure by AMG. When people say, how can I possibly set dials without knowing the information? Just unshackle yourself from the anchor, let go, try and see what happens. Instead of shackling yourself the entire time to the anchor, you can still compare. That's okay. We will do that. It's what's going to happen. Just let's do a little Kylo, but on the good side. Let the past die.
Yep.
Well, not necessarily if the past was better and he still feels better objectively. Like, if you can think about it. Now, I don't disagree with what you said about like anchoring and stuff like that, only with the person who gave that, because what they're referring to in anchoring and the way that it's used is basically different. So that's a marketing term, and it's basically saying like, hey, look, I bought this cop cost $1 million, so now you're anchored to this is the value of $1 million.
Yeah, you know the business side.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this, but this is $50. You're saving 950 million, whatever.
Yep.
So that's anchoring. So
Yeah,
they use the
know-
wrong terminology, but I get what you're trying to get at. It's just the wrong terminology.
You have the business side of anchoring, yes, but it's the general cognitive bias where people have basically their bar is set on that one instance, and they're not detaching from it to experience or have a different cognitive thought separate from it.
All right. Well,
Can we write now? Can we
that
burn?
was good. Now available on our shop. Get your torch. I'm just kidding. All right. And I think one of the things I wanted to do, and I talked about this on Saturday, and I don't know how. I don't know about the execution exactly yet. But I do think that data is important, right? I do think that data is important. And what I'm thinking is after Alderaan, because again, I'm not even going to announce anything about it. I guess I'm technically kind of doing it now, but I'm not actually going to start planning anything until after Alderaan. But I want to set up some tests, because I would assume, if I'm AMG, that they're at minimum going, at least that is baseline. There was a reaction, right? And I would legitimately like to put on like I want to simulate a tournament, okay? I want to simulate a tournament where we kind of run a couple of different scenarios. And the reason I say tournament is like, because I think in order to get viable numbers, I know we have a lot of people saying, like individual people, like saying, hey, I played a game and this was my result. And I would love to kind of do a study where we can get 200, 300, 400 games worth of data on this after dials thing, with a bunch of different lists, okay? Because I think it does matter. I think it does matter that the lists are different, and have people be able to express what happened and have some way to quantify that. And I say that that's difficult because, again, survey questions that actually give data are hard to write. So that's something that I want to do. And I think that if you are passionate, like if you are on anywhere on this spectrum but you are passionate about it, I would love for your participation in this. This would be 100% free. All right, this is literally us. I just want to know, like, I really want to know where people are and have their experience. And I guess what I'm asking for is your time, all right, which has value. But I would love to put on, like I said, simulate a tournament where we try a couple of different things and make it public, because I would hope that AMG looks at some of the data from the things that have happened in and around the X-Wing community. We put on some pretty major events, and maybe that could be useful. And at the very least, we get to know how people feel. At the least, and we could talk about that on the podcast, so we get content.
Okay, I'm going to say something that's a little negative.
Sure.
It is sad to me that you and that Ryan Farmer, because Ryan Farmer also did something like, hey, post a picture of you trying this out, send it in, we'll give you
Sure.
these cool little first edition Minoc Squadron swag. It's sad to me that you and him and other people, I'm sure, in other communities are, to encourage people to give it a go, can do this and do it in an eloquent and productive and fun way. And we're getting radio silence from the producers, from the people that actually stand to gain money and keep their jobs and their livelihood out of it. So that's a disappointment. That, like I said, from this entire episode, rules aside, we'll make do. It's just the missteps in that regard, because you have a community and you have community leaders that are so willing to, if you just engage with them, like if they pick up the phone and say, hey Dion, hey Ryan, hey Filippo, hey, Gabo, and everyone else who's a community leader in the different pockets of the world, Octocon, everyone, like the community leaders, it's so easy to basically mine information and get a pulse of things before they get released, and even not even just get a pulse, but just feed information, just in a more eloquent way by saying like, hey, we're thinking about doing this, why don't you guys try it out as a fun thing right here. They don't have to tell you. They don't have to tell the population. You don't have to tell the population. It's like, hey, why don't you give this a go and tell us what you find out. I know you would be more than willing to do it.
Always.
Because it gives you access to them. It gives you they don't even have, maybe they have to pay you, but whatever. More than anything, they give you access to, gives you access to them, and it gets you kind of in the in, and maybe when there's time to stream something, they'll be like, hey, Dion, whatever. So that, there's benefits there. So it's sad to me that the community can come up with very productive ways of testing out new formats. And I didn't mention Chris Allen. Of course, how can I not mention Chris Allen? Chris Allen with the crates, putting together these very, changing your list mid rounds, banning things, and he's doing it very effectively. Everybody's having a fun time. GSP 3-0, baby. Everybody's having a good time with the crate tournament, and they're all weird and wacky rules, and things are banned because they said they're banned, and people are enjoying it. So there's people that and then, like, the community is willing to accept change if it's presented in the right way,
right?
And if they feel like they have some input and some say. So hopefully they do listen to episodes like this, but because they can, they can see that there's community members that are honestly trying, we want you to succeed. Even the people that are yelling at you, they want you to succeed.
And I think to take it to kind of piggyback off of your thought is, I know that a lot of people don't 100% like even with the communications that we have had, that AMG's communication does feel a little piecemeal, right? It's very, very much focused on their social media platforms, right? Like it's focused on it's Facebook, Twitter, mostly those two. And then they have their Twitch streams, but it feels divided because most people, everybody, at least a lot of people in the X-Wing community, they were used to the FFG website as a hub. But if they want to really go and try to be very what I'm going to say forward thinking and saying that, like, if you're going to engage with us, this is how you do it. You do it through our social media. If that's the way they're going to go, you take it a step further. And like, this is just kind of talking about marketing, and you've talked about it a little bit before, is influencer based marketing is a thing. You don't even have to pay necessarily. In the tech world, this is a very common thing where it's like, hey, we're not paying you for a review, but we'll send you this thing if you want to look at it. Here you go. That in X-Wing, that thing is information, right? That thing is communication, is something like that. And if it that would be the way, that would be at least a way to do exactly what you were saying there, Marcel. So yeah, that's we gave our piece. We added a little extra there. We'll do one kind of last quick roll through, and then we'll call it for the night. Anything else you want to tack on for this before we head out?
My closing statements.
Yes,
have to
closing
be,
statements.
That I myself and want to encourage others to, of course, try it out. Try it out multiple times, right? Teach other people how to play that way and see what their reaction is. Like it will not be easy. There's a lot of players who, and I think someone mentioned this earlier. Well, I know they mentioned it, but I forget who mentioned it. Was like, was there this much, blowback when they announced a second edition? And I don't think that there was. I think a lot of people were ready for change at that point in time. But I think that right now, people aren't ready for a change. That AMG is, rocking the boat too much. But I think that going forward, we are gonna have to have an open mind about you got a new developer, new thought processes on what the game should be, and we're just gonna have to roll with the punches. I mean, I don't think that the sky is falling, but we do need to look at it more objectively, and that's kind of the promise to myself, that you got to be willing to try it, got to be able to look at it more objectively and ask those reasons, which I really like. I won't say the question of why, not so much as feelings, but trying to get into that mindset of why would they implement these changes. I think is a very good starting point for everybody to assess. And hopefully, moving forward, we can understand the developers' reasons, specifically of why, and that might hopefully calm everybody down once we get that insight. Maybe it's something we don't even know, Dion. I mean, if we can't even think of these rules, maybe we can't even think of the reason why, right? It could be, hopefully it'll be something, deep and insightful that will continue, right? Galaxy Brain, something deep and insightful that we aren't even considering. So I'm looking forward to the future, even if I'm still unsure on if the rules are moving the game in the direction I would prefer. I still hope that everybody goes for that. What do I want to say? Future, I guess. It's gonna be hard to have a future if everybody pitchforks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think keep your stick on the ice. We're all in this together.
Ryan?
I feel I took my end time in the anchoring point, but I guess beyond that, we're all still gonna have fun with this game. Be nice to each other like we always should be, and stay cordial, stay constructive, and have fun. That's it. It's plastic spaceships. We make pew pew noises. We have fun with thematic lists and ships. That's the core, really. So no matter what the changes are, like Will said, we'll roll with it. We'll figure it out. Some people won't be able to handle it. You know what? That's okay. They got their stances. That's what they feel like. They're allowed to feel what they feel to a certain degree, to the point where they don't hurt other people online. We talked about earlier some of the things that occurred. Let's mitigate that as best as possible. Let's be nicer across the board.
Marcel?
First, I've been looking at it, but I haven't commented on it. Will's got like the best haircut he's had in a long time. Looking good, Will.
This is influenced by Ryan's sweeping position. I don't know what to do with my hair.
Have I started the trim beard and the whoosh?
I don't know. My hair is.
You gotta grow it out, Dion. Come on, you gotta get to it.
Only if you do it too. We can go 4 for 4. This is fine.
I'll do it. Mine is closer to there than yours. Yeah. Anyway, I think I said enough today. Today you got serious, Marcel, like 80% of the time today. I'll be back to mispronounce stuff and talk about autopilot drones next week. So it's good for now.
All right. And for myself, we just got to see what happens. I don't know. I'm really curious. The number one thing I'm waiting for is the next AMG communication about X-Wing. We know by them, we've talked about that their communication has been piecemeal in the past, that they've dropped tidbits about X-Wing during other things and all that, and that today they didn't do that. I want to know when they communicate about this. That is the next thing I'm looking for. If you're a part of the GSP community and you want to keep talking about these things, there is a dedicated spot to do it on the Discord, but you do it my way. Give me reasonings. Give me why. Be an adult, not a jerk. And you can talk. Otherwise, you're banned. That's just period. End of story. I love that we've been able to cultivate a majority and a high majority of people who know how to talk to each other on our Discord. Let's keep it that way. So, other than that, watch our Halloween edition of Paint Wars. Thanks for listening, and thanks for watching. Gold Squadron out.